now. There we go. And we just welcome you all. Haley, thank you so much.
Hi, everybody, and happy August. I couldn't believe the back to school stuff happening. Can y'all believe summer's done? Anyway, so again, I am also very happy to see your faces, and I'm also really relieved that we are going to have this discussion today. We're going to be talking about DEI, which is something that I think we throw around, but not everyone knows what it means. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And most of our agencies, as well as religious organizations or government offices, did focus on diversity, equity, or inclusion, or we had some cultural competency trainings, and we did intertwine those into our work. However, last year, with the death of Mr. George Floyd and then the civil unrest that followed, it became at the forefront, and most of our agencies kind of went into high gear, making sure that what we had was adequate, making sure that we were addressing issues, but also more importantly, that there was a forum, an open forum for all of us to talk about these issues. So over the past year, I feel like so many of us have gotten to a safe, comfortable space with our colleagues, as well as our agencies, to talk about these issues, but we never got a chance to talk here. And one of the things that we do focus on here at the Coalition is our self-care. There's so much trauma that we are experiencing either secondhand or firsthand with our jobs, and just what we are hearing and seeing. And I wanted to give a chance to honor that with us. Yes, we have so many trainings about our participants, but again, this is about us. And so we asked a few of our colleagues to come together and be on this panel. It's only 4 people. A few, as we all know, emergencies arise. So what we're going to do is ask some questions, and they're going to facilitate a conversation. I want you to be involved. But the way that we're going to do that is have you be involved through the chat. So please ask your questions, please give your feedback, and I'm hoping that we can intertwine all of this together. So again, we're going to be talking about diversion, equity, and inclusion, how it affects our work life and our own self-care. And so I want to throw it over to, I'm going to throw it over to Sarah with Westside Family to introduce yourself, as well as a little bit about your agency, and then you'll get to know the panelists, and then we'll move on to the questions. So Sarah, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm the licensed clinical social worker here at Westside Family Health Center, and I'm a mental health provider. So we provide behavioral health counseling services at a community clinic.
Thank you so much and welcome. I'd also like to introduce Damond with PATH.
Hello, everyone. My name is Damond Johnson with PATH. I'm with the West LA outreach team. So we're outreaching not only in West LA, but also at Westchester Park over in Westchester, Los Angeles.
Thank you for joining. And then Roxanne with Alcott Center.
Hello, everyone. I'm Roxanne with the Alcott Center Mental Health Agency over in West LA. I'm their community outreach and media person, and just hoping to talk a little bit about what we've been doing as an agency. And yeah, excited to be a part of this meeting with you all.
Thanks, Roxanne. It's good to see your face. It's been a while. We used to have meetings constantly, and now we don't. And then also looking for Martel from SPY. Okay, maybe not. Lots of stuff happens, and I think that unfortunately our calendars don't win sometimes, right? So then we have 3 panelists, and again, I do want to make sure that everybody is welcome to join in the conversation through the chat, so we can give the panelists kind of an organic conversation. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is, it's very important to address cultural competency with our participants. How do you educate yourselves and your colleagues, and how does your cultural everything affect how you work? I'm going to just throw it out this time in hopes that we have lots of different conversations. So Damond, because we work together, sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus and you have to go first.
I expected that. So I think for me, it affects me in a different way. So of course, just by looking at me, we can tell that I'm African American, right? So I mean, I think that's first and foremost. So me working in the field and working with not only our clients but staff, I have to come in with a different mindset. I have to come in pretty much open-minded and open-hearted, and come in with a little compassion and empathy, because working out here in the field, I run across different people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different religions, and I have to be ready for what's not only, for what's thrown at me. I've been called all kind of different names that we probably can think of just working in the field. So I have to come in with a different mindset. I have to be empathetic towards that, understanding that some people are taught a certain way, and at the same time come in with peace on my face. I have to come in with the look that I'm hired, and I'm really here to work with people. So that way I can be persistent and consistent on what I'm doing with my work, right? And trying to help. So that way I can get to a point to where I can kind of ask them about their cultural background and just be a great listener. And at the same time, go and do research about whatever cultural background they may have, so I can be a little educated on the matter, so that way I can have dialogue with them. Maybe I can meet them where they're at, right? So it's important. It's important that we learn about different cultures. We understand different cultures and try to respect it, so that way we can come in open-minded and we can build some type of relationship with each other as client and as client and staff, as well as staff members or colleagues, right? We're going to be not only working in the field with different people from different backgrounds, but also in our office, we're working with people from different backgrounds. So maybe even going to have lunch with somebody from a different culture and tasting their food, right? To build that relationship. So I think it's important to be open about learning about other people.
Thank you. Sarah or Roxanne, go ahead.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I think compassion and empathy is a big piece of it. Also, along the lines of humility too, and just kind of sensitivity to context. I think culture by definition is pretty all-encompassing, whether it's ethnicity, racial, religion, or even just home life. So just being sensitive to that. And showing a level of curiosity in a respectful manner. I think being open to asking questions to help better understand where the other person is coming from. And I think a lot of this work relates to the personal relationship we build with clients and patients. And part of that is cultivating like a safe and welcoming environment, and encouraging them to be open and honest about their experience, but that's not always guaranteed. So just kind of practicing that level of humility where they are their own expert in their own lives, and integrating that into treatment is important.
I definitely think for me, and not just for me, but for our agency as a mental health agency, I think the importance of having a conversation and talking about some of the things, some of the barriers they face, and really not just engaging in conversation with our participants that we interact with, but also with the staff members that we're working with who have had a different experience than we did, and just engaging in conversation and, even being as open-minded as if I say something or anyone says something wrong, or if there's something that's not said right, and then we just kind of feel comfortable enough to kind of address those direct concerns, I think really also makes a difference in how we approach our participants and how we can better help them. So, and it's just piggybacking off of what Damond and our other people were saying too.
Thank you. I just added some keywords to the chat, and I really encourage everybody else to do that. This is what just an exercise on like what jumps out at you. So one of the things that I think that we've all been trying to do this year is change, right? Not just talk the talk, but actually make some things change. So I wanted to talk about some positive changes in the field, right? Because with your colleagues, we have a lot of control, but in the field, how is this past year and addressing diversion and even making sure that equitability is in our conversations, how has that changed? And what positive changes do you think that we need to do or have you done? So Sarah, just randomly picking people now.
When I think of change, I think of how self-awareness is a big part of it. We could throw as much cultural competency trainings at our staff, but I think a big piece of that is experiential, and even just in the micro interactions that we have in providing care or with other people, and again, it comes with that level of humility, the compassion, the empathy, and just thinking outside of ourselves.
So if you guys don't mind, I shared a story with Haley recently about working in the field. And we had one of the guys at Westchester Park openly say, hey, I don't deal with Black people. I don't want to deal with you guys, period, right? So we've been there for a while, and he's fairly new, but we keep trying to engage him. We're engaging people that he's literally sitting with, right? They're sitting in a group, let's say a group of 5, we can engage with 4 of them, but him, he's not gonna be in. Hey, I don't deal with African Americans, flat out. So we don't have a Caucasian resource in the field. We don't have that. So we're looking for resources, and when we think about equity, we think about resources for ourselves. But in this sense, we don't have anyone to come out and help him. We need a Caucasian resource. So I think what we need to make changes on or improve is who comes out, and I'm speaking even on DMH. So even the DMH workers that come out is African American and or Latino, right? So we have this issue of not having people included in the field. And I think that's a big challenge for us. And I think we may need to have someone come out, whether it's twice a month and work with us in the field, so that way we can reach each client. I think that needs to change or improve.
Hi, everyone. I jumped on a little bit late. I'm Tanisha Saunders. I am a live-in resident coordinator for the Roots to Grow program, which is a partnership between Safe Place for Youth and Venice Community Housing. So great support and partnership there. I am also the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee co-chair at Safe Place for Youth. So I'm just jumping on in. Good morning. I'm having a little bit of a rough start here, but excited to be here and join this conversation. And I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen this past year is this boldness and this brave space that we are all stepping into, because I think the work around DEI can be uncomfortable, but being uncomfortable is where change happens. And I think having these conversations are important. And as an organization at Safe Place for Youth, I've definitely seen a renewed energy and focus around including DEI, not just as a committee, but throughout our programming, throughout our organization, throughout our partnerships, being very intentional about the work and realistic that this work and this change is not going to happen overnight, but just seeing how we're embedding DEI throughout all of our initiatives, and being very aware. As far as change, I think that momentum has to keep going. We as a culture in the United States, things can get trendy, and then a couple of months later, they will fall off and something else will come around. But I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important to the work that we do, because it's how we sustain ourselves, and it's also how we realistically address and end homelessness, is by, addressing the history, addressing how we got to where we are right now, and doing this work in an honest and restorative way.
And something that Sarah had mentioned was the self-awareness. I definitely think like a great example with Damond saying at the Westchester Park, sometimes when some of the clients are sharing their stories and just kind of listening to them and like really listening to where they're at in their life, it kind of gives you another perspective of like, oh, this is like how other people live, and this is like some of the other struggles that people face, and just kind of having that sense of understanding. It just and trying to help these people and kind of see them where they're at, and where they're at in that time of their life, I think is really helpful as well. Yeah.
I just want to also add to what Tanisha shared. I appreciate what you shared. And just kind of like, I think the visualization and the movement behind it has been more apparent, right? Whether we see posters of Black Lives Matter or people standing against hate against Asian Americans. So yeah, I think the trendy piece is really important, especially in the realm of like social media and like hashtags and stuff like that. Just trying to maintain the momentum, I think is really important.
Haley, if you don't mind, I want to share the fact that the DEI committee has also exposed internalized racism. So I think some of the conversations that we have with one another as African American, it gives me the chance to go back and say, hey, we got to watch our words, because if somebody else said that, we would have an issue. We have to watch the way we treat each other, because if someone else treated us this way, we would have an issue. So I think the DEI committee has brought out so many different things, and we don't realize how strong racism is. It can become very contagious, and we don't realize that, and we catch it. Sometimes we catch it looking in the mirror. So it's great. It's hands down, it's great.
So Damond is referring to our DEI committee that we have at PATH, and what we decided is, and I believe, yes, SPY has one. I think the People Concern has one, and I think, it might not have that title, but I think a lot of agencies are moving into it. And what we decided that it was going to be a brave, safe space. And so you can say and ask questions, right? And there have been statements that people don't like. And we can work through those together with either education. And I think the safe space is something new, because it's not necessarily like this is a PATH group, you have to be very professional kind of thing. We have to make sure that we're allowing people to make mistakes almost, and then learning from them. I appreciate all of your input. And I do want to go back to the trendiness if I can. So thank you, Tanisha, for bringing that up. And that almost one ethnicity might be highlighted versus another. And then sometimes we can kind of pin the other groups against each other. So has the trendiness, or as Tanisha said, the boldness, has it affected your work? Has it affected your self-care? That people are asking more questions or not saying things and saying the wrong things. Has it affected you as a clinician, as a social worker, as an outreach worker? And has that trendiness affected either a negative or a positive? in your workplace?
I will speak for myself, from my personal point of view. Our DEI committee is fairly new. So we fully established in December, and we've been working to find our grounding and our confidence in the space. So I can speak as far as myself and the trendiness. I think since I've started doing this DEI work, I've become hyper aware. And now I feel like I have a DEI lens with everything. And I think when we talk about diversity, it's important to not just get focused solely on race, that there are so many other forms of diversity. And when we're talking about being inclusive in space, whereas it's educational background, social economic status, lived experience. And I can speak for myself as a person with lived experience in homelessness, as a person who is a former foster youth, as a person who is an African-American person living with a disability. I have a whole list of things. And I think I've personally had to check in with myself more constantly and how I'm showing up to this work, and how I'm just aware of my own personal triggers, and how I'm advocating for myself, but then also others. And diversity is it's a large taking on. And I think sometimes we can overthink things, or try to walk on eggshells. And the point of this work is not to walk on eggshells. It's to not make folks uncomfortable, not make folks scared to share their opinions, but for us to have honest conversations and move forward in this work. Because if we're scared to say what we think, or imagine what harm we're doing when we're acting upon our opinions, when we're not in spaces that are courageous spaces. Safe spaces are important. We also need courageous spaces where we're speaking up and we're welcoming one another in, embracing the diversity. And I think, going back to what I was saying, as far as my lens, I'm thinking how we are uplifting and empowering people from diverse backgrounds, whether that's religion, like I said, lived experience, personal gender identity. There's so many different ways. And I think for us to think we can take that on ourselves, it's a lot, but we have to focus on being inclusive and creating spaces where folks are able to stand up, advocate for themselves, and bring themselves wholly to the work that they do without feeling ashamed. And so that's the mood and that's the mindset that I see myself and our committee currently in. Not to speak solely on behalf of people, but how are we creating spaces where they can speak and bring themselves forward, creating spaces where they could give us feedback and different things like that. So, yeah.
Sarah, I hate to pinpoint you since you're the one that the hashtags and the stuff like that. How has that trendiness, or if I'm not sure if there's a better word, to be honest, or social media or whatever, how has that affected negative or positive?
Yeah, I think, everybody's different. And, again, like as Tanisha mentioned, I can only speak for myself, but I tend to internalize a lot. And so, it is uplifting to see the solidarity and the attention brought to violence against people of color, but also has been long standing, So like balancing that and like helping, like fostering a level of like authenticity and open and honest conversation from individual interactions to group conversations, I think is really important. And challenging ourselves to speak up in different ways, like, this meeting in itself, I think is working towards, the mission of DEI. And so I think that's extremely important. And just as much as they're within solidarity and masses and groups of people and organizing is really inspirational and maintains that momentum, but knowing times where you need relief from the solidarity too, and checking in with yourself.
For me, I think Tanisha and Sarah took my notes. No, I'm kidding. But to piggyback on what they're saying, I think for me, I want to use the word compassion again, being sympathetic and you know, for the suffering, for people that are misfortunate, right? Or unfortunate. And I think it's a misfortune not to interact with people of a different culture or different ethnicity or whatever the case may be. So I come in with a little empathy for people passion for people like that, and it creates empathy. So, and then it also goes into spirituality. So then I'm thankful and grateful that I don't have that in my heart and in my mind. My mind and heart is aligned together. So I don't have that. So I'm thankful to God. And then that's where the gratitude comes in at, you know. So I think it's awesome.
So I want to bring up something that Tanisha said too, so we can remember. She did say lived experience, but it's also backgrounds, right? Yesterday we got a report that a gang was going to have a memorial in a park, and automatically everybody went to violence. And I'm not sure that was ever mentioned in the report, right? And so we have to watch, right, stereotypical thoughts and how that just constantly enters, whether it's what is your first thought when we say lived experience? What is your first thought when you hear recovery? What is your first thought when you hear Mormon? That was the first, I couldn't think of another religion, but you know, you have to constantly think that first thought. And just like Damond said earlier, is that what we're presenting? Without even realizing it, because it's just been, you know, Damond did say that's how they were raised. And I think that that's been the excuse for a really long time. And so how can we move, right? I'm not saying change, but how can we move with that or past that, or even help somebody move down a different path in looking at those things? The main focus of what we've been trying to talk about is our own self-care with the secondary trauma that we deal with. And it's usually having to do with our participants, what we see and hear. However, this secondary trauma is a little bit different because it can actually be our trauma. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit of how do you honor your own culture, no matter what you identify as, within your self-care process. And then how do we bring that to our participants, and how do we make sure that they get to honor theirs while taking care of themselves, but mostly you, your colleagues, and at work? What is your self-care, and does your cultural identity affect it? And how can we positively spread that? And I'm gonna start, sorry, Roxanne, you're okay.
Don't worry, I already knew it. No worries. That's such a loaded question. I don't even know where to start. I think something that I've really taken note of this past year is how much people are willing to engage in conversation and have more self-awareness when it comes to how we care for others and how we show empathy. I wanted to say so many things, but just the question, it's yeah.
Popcorn into somebody else, either Sarah, Damond, or
Yes.
Tanisha.
Oh my gosh. And then I want to go back at it again and say and add more to that. But yeah, there's so much that I'm thinking of with the question, but I guess I'll pass it on to Damond if you wanna, and then we can circle back to me because I want to add to that.
So I am a gang specialist. So I am one of the ones that actually teach different nonprofits about gang intervention prevention and or how to how do I want to say, how to diffuse a gang war. I'm actually at the table as we speak. Not right now, but this weekend I'll be at the table as we speak about gangs. So we're trying to get these two gangs to come together and come to an agreement of a ceasefire and or build some type of positive relationship. So when you talk about the gang thing, and I was actually right in the chat, the word gang was given to the African Americans in 1865. Two or more Black people were caught standing in the group. That's considered a gang, right? So that's carried, that narrative and that mind, that picture has carried for many years. And I think that for me, coming from that background and that lifestyle, it's easier for me to engage with people out in the field that may come from that background, right? And or if they don't come from that background, I still can relate to them because of the background, right? So I understand homelessness. I think some of us are not honest about where we've been, right? So I understand homelessness. I've been there. I've experienced it. It's a lived experience. So I think that I can relate to them a lot better. The spiritual realm, I have to use their spiritual realm. Normally I pray 5 times a day. It brings me back down to where I need to be, sometimes 7, but it brings me back down to where I need to be. So I can always be in check with myself. I try not to let anything bother me. And once again, I have to use the word compassion. I have to have compassion coming in. I have to have compassion working with the participants and our clients coming in. I have to have compassion for myself. And I have to, once again, come with a peaceful heart and a peaceful mind. So if anything takes place that may affect me personally, like using the word nigger, because I've heard that many days, I don't have to take it personal because that's not who I am. I'm peaceful inside, right? So we can move forward. And if I can't work with that client, I know how to pass the ball. I did play football. I was a running back, so I know how to pass the ball, right? I don't want to be the man. So it works. It works. And I think having these talks like this gives us a chance to express ourselves and let it out. And then on the other hand, I do self-care physically. I am a boxer, an ex-boxer. So lately I've been training. I train the youth in the community. So that's my outlet. And then I love the beach. I love walking on the beach. I love going to the beach where my phone, it doesn't ring because I'm so far away from everything. It doesn't ring. I get a peace of mind. I read a book. I go to sleep, eat some fruit, whatever, swim, whatever the case may be. I try to make sure that I give myself an environment that's peaceful. So when I go back home, I don't take whatever I carry from work. I don't carry that home. Whatever I took in from work, I don't carry it home. So my home can be peaceful. And then I start back the next day. I come back to work with a peaceful mind and peaceful heart, and I have a smile on my face. And then we can move forward, right? So that's how I work with it. That's what I do in order to cope and to just day by day, get through day by day.
Sarah or Tanisha?
Yeah, I think as a mental health provider, I think self-care is a huge part of like treatment and encouraging patients to engage in self-care and discover what self-care means for them. But as you know, there is a stigma behind, mental health services in general, especially in communities of color, and also the idea of self-care because like coming from families or like a family-oriented culture or where the collective is encouraged and prioritized. Self-care can be associated with like selfishness or like levels of guilt, which is very common. So kind of like reframing it or, empowering yourself to define it in a way that's important to you, or even like challenge the idea of like self-care is also being taken care of and kind of seeking solace in communities and in interpersonal relationships. There's also a lot of like, I think self-care can also, be a bit trendy too, like it's defined as very like singular activities where I think a part of it is routine. It's not just going for that bubble bath or that massage or going out for a movie. It's integrated into daily routine and making it part of like a structured schedule in which you make sure you carve out time and space for it in your day, and just like experimenting with different activities or different realms of how you can practice self-care, which includes spirituality.
Roxanne, you said we'll circle back with you, right? So I think thank you for lifting up the, again, trendiness of self-care. I think self-care is a concept outwardly that we've been talking about more over the past couple of years, but I've always seen self-care as something that hasn't been super approachable to me because it always came from like bubble baths and taking long walks on the beach. And I'm like, well, what do you say to someone who doesn't have a bath? How does that look to me? But since I've started this work for the past, I want to say year and a half, 2 years after facing burnout early on in my career, I've been very adamant about self-care and wellness and defining what that means to ourselves. So I think when it comes to like celebrating culturally and what culturally it looks like for me, I've been really loving the trendiness of just all things Black magic, Wakanda Forever, Black Panther. I've been loving all the trends where I could see myself celebrated in media, celebrated in culture. And I think that's just been super empowering for me because, you know, there's all these tropes about the strong Black woman. There's, you know, tropes about working in this field where it's just like, okay, well, this is a part of our work. Burnout is a part of our work. It's just to be expected. But burnout also comes from our environment. So how are we changing our environments to actually, again, be honest and have honest conversations about burnout, have honest conversations about what wellness looks like in the workplace, what self-care looks like in the workplace. And I'm not saying everybody create yoga and meditation spaces, but really being intentional about how we're even doing things like how we're scheduling meetings. One thing that I've seen this past year is my coworkers and our organization be more vocal about leaving space in between meetings. So instead of a meeting being an hour, start a meeting 15 minutes into the hour or end it 15 minutes before the hour. So you're giving yourself that break to transition, which is super important. Like, how are we building in self-care and wellness into our workplaces and our workspaces? And then how does that translate in how we interact with one another, how we interact with our members, and what that looks like? I had a coworker on Monday who celebrated one of our residents' birthdays by decorating and also creating a meal with them from food that we had in our lettuce grow tower. And that was such a refreshing experience, not only for my coworker, but also the residents who were just taking that time to be and exist. And I think when we talk about culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of those things come from ourselves internally. How do we come into a space? How do we feel welcome into a space? So how are we creating spaces, again, where people can bring their whole selves, where our members can go from surviving to thriving? And that comes from creating safe spaces where people feel comfortable just existing. And then we get to learn more about one another, even as coworkers. You know, if I feel like I'm under pressure all the time, then maybe I'm not sharing more of myself because it's just work, work, work. So how do we, especially as we're all navigating a pandemic, really be intentional and honest and create environments that are focused on self-care and wellness?
Roxanne, just taking it in, or?
Yeah, sorry, so many great answers here. I'm just resonating and kind of like hearing what everyone else is saying. And just to add to that, I think again, coming from a mental health agency, something that we always talk about at Alcott is just reducing that stigma. And I think kind of meeting the clients also where they're at. And then in terms of self-care, I think Tanisha made a really good point about, well, like if, you know, everybody's form of self-care is different. And if they don't have the thing that you suggest, it's kind of just, you know, again, meeting them where they're at, but also just kind of listening more to what does that mean for them. And for me, it's just kind of taking a step back and observing and reading a lot about these topics, just because it helps. But definitely, yeah.
I really want to thank y'all. I think that one of the things that we've been discussing is the difference between brave and safe space, because it might not necessarily feel safe to you, but to let you know that we honor your being brave and speaking about these kind of things. It's not easy, especially for different I'm white, so I don't have a lot of, I think a lot of things are thrown at me because I'm white, and I can take it, right? And that, but I want to still be a part of these conversations. I hope that that makes sense, that I'm so happy to listen and to learn, and that I'm given that opportunity at every step of the way. I also wanted to say, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your fabulous words, I think, help people take action when these meetings end. And so just wanted to thank you again. Also, there's something that's called the appreciation language quiz. And I really encourage you and your colleagues to take it, but not at so specific. I think that when you start talking about all of the questions that you're answering, go a little bit deeper as to why they chose certain answers about their background, about their upbringing, about their current status, so that you can learn a little bit more about their culture, as well as how they want to be appreciated at work. And that can really help another talk, another journey within the self-care. Because I do want to also say again what Sarah said, is that taking care of yourself is considered selfish in some cultures. And so we have to make sure that we are honoring our staff and how they are choosing to take care of themselves versus what we are putting on them in a stereotypical dynamic. And so, again, this is another conversation that could go on forever and ever and ever. And I would actually love to get coffee with the panel members and just keep going and going and going. But unfortunately, we can't do that because of the stupid Delta variant, right? So I really hope that we can come to this conversation again, maybe do this on a regular basis where we can talk about this. Again, I appreciate everyone that said anything, that put any comment into the chat. And I really would like to continue this brave conversation. And again, thank you, Damond, Tanisha, Sarah, and Roxanne. I appreciate who you are and all that you offered today.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you so much, fellow panelists, Damond, Tanisha, Roxanne. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I would just like to add that, if you're curious about your workspaces, what your coworkers think, what they need, or how to create more inclusive spaces for your clients, members, etc., I would say anonymous surveys or anonymous ways that folks can give feedback, because that's also how you can create brave spaces, how you can look at your personal spaces and how there may be opportunities for you all.
That's a great idea. I think that's a good start for all of us that don't know how to start the conversation. Doodle polls or whatever they're called can really get the conversation going. That's a great idea, Tanisha.
Okay, thank you, you guys. It's a blessing. Thank you for having me. And I just want to say, I think that we need to become open-minded and try new things. And also as agencies, I think that we need to have these retreats and maybe choose different places to go to. And that may help our colleagues become open-minded and open-hearted and see different things, and they can take it back home and or to their communities. Thank you, Haley.
Thank y'all. Darcy, thank you as always for holding these opportunities for us.
Absolutely. And thank you, Haley, for your leadership. We really appreciate it. We launched a real simple 3-question poll just as a follow-up. And, it means a lot that we can have these kinds of conversations openly, and protecting our staff and providing the best that we can for them is of utmost importance. And so thank you guys. This was very, very good today. So if any of you, again, have anything that you want to add to the chat, please do, if you've got any announcements, if you've got anything for our panelists, please go ahead and, thank them for their time or whatever, but really appreciate you being here today. All right, anybody else? We're all good?
Hi, Darcy.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Are you heading out, Julie? I guess the answer would be yes. So good to see you guys.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. Good stuff. Okay.